Hi there, I'm Lara Smith, and this is the Sweaty Pillow Podcast. I am beyond delighted, maybe a bit nervous to have this very special guest today. It's someone that I've known and admired since 2021 when we were starting or we were in the R&D phase of our sheets. And
Yeah.
we've got Dr. Michael Breus here, who we were just reminiscing on that journey, who really gave it to me straight, really well, you did, and you forced this scientific rigor on
Yeah.
really creating. And the words that you said at the time is, Lara, you want to create, think about sheets of the future.
Right.
So you were such a great mentor to me, and I'm going to make sure I read properly your credentials because it's extraordinarily special. For sure, one of the world's leading experts on sleep. We're way beyond the North American borders here. Clinical psychologist and one of only a handful of people to hold both a PhD in clinical psychology and be board certified in clinical sleep disorders. So tell us about the
Yeah.
stats on how many people in the world have that.
So it's kind of crazy. So I am one of 168 people in the world who took the medical specialty boards in sleep without going to medical school and passed. So I had to teach myself neuroanatomy, neurochemistry, basic pediatrics, general medicine, things like that. And it took me about a year to learn it all while I was out there seeing patients. It's really served me well because I feel confident that I can understand the biology, but then I also understand the psychology of sleep, sleep disorders, what I call disordered sleep. A lot of people don't even look at menopause from a sleep perspective, which, by the way, is really
Mm.
stupid. I don't know why they wouldn't. We know that there are so many symptoms that come along with all of the stages of menopause. And by the way, not just menopause, like women's health in general, like sleep is a big, big factor. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk about it here on the pod today. But yeah, it's been a fun journey. I feel very fortunate. I've written a bunch of books. I get to do a lot of TV. I get to hang out with people like you, and it's fun because I get to mix it up a bit and trade ideas, and that's where I grow. Every time I do one of these, I feel like I grow a little bit, and that's kind of the reason why I do them.
Oh, we're so lucky to have you. And I mean, I still remember the day, like, I don't know, March 9th, 2021, when you actually responded to me on LinkedIn. And because I'm such a techie science nerd and squealing around the house, it was like way better than if Brad Pitt had responded.
Now that's a first. No one has told me that they prefer me to Brad Pitt, including my wife. So
There you go.
I that is the best compliment I think I have ever gotten. So thank you so much.
Well, sleep is more important, let's be honest.
It is. It's pretty important.
So we were talking a little bit. Tell us about kind of your work. I do. There's some topics definitely our audience is going to be interested in. But what are you up to today?
So for this audience, there's a couple of things that I think are really kind of cool, literally. And so I'm working with a new startup called Orion Sleep. It's very interesting. And so what we've done is we have a topper that goes on top of the bed with a thin tube in it, and it runs either cool water or warm water through it. And so what this does is a lot of people, especially in this category, experience hot flashes. These surges in energy and temperature, which quite frankly are overwhelming. And full disclosure, I'm in the middle of andropause myself. And so I've got hot flashes, believe it or not. Like I had one wake me up last night. So it's very appropriate. Like I had a sweaty pillow last night. And so it's interesting when you start to think about some of this symptomatology. And so this company that I just started working with, I'm about to put the product on my bed itself, is both a warming and a cooling product. And so what's interesting is a lot of people are like, well, I get hot flashes, so I'm going to crank the AC way down in my bedroom. Here's the problem with that is the macro climate. That's the climate outside of the sheets. But there's a micro climate under the sheets, right?
Yeah.
And that's where sheeting becomes so important for people to understand, because what you want to have is you want to have sheets that can reflect the heat and be able to dissipate heat and things like that. But many people, unfortunately, don't have that kind of sheets, especially things like polyester or super high weave cotton or things like that are not necessarily what people should be having. And so what ends up happening is under the covers, there's this area and it gets very warm. And so one of the things that we know is during sleep, your core body temperature has to drop in order for you to get into the deeper stages of sleep. And so it's kind of hard to do that when you're under the covers and it's warm under there. Now, don't get me wrong, we're approaching the winter months. And so it's nice and snuggly, as my daughter likes to say, to get under the covers and, ball up and kind of get nice and warm and cozy. But, at 1 o'clock in the morning, when your own internal furnace decided to kick in for no apparent reason, and you're roasting and you're throwing the covers off and you're drenched in sweat and you're taking off clothing, you need some form of relief. And so this is a product that I really like. Part of the reason I like it is because the range is so expanded. So there are other what we call thermoregulatory products on the market. And they're interesting, right? Some that have similar technology, but a lot of them don't get as cold or don't get as warm as the Orion product does. And I think that's a really interesting feature. But my favorite part is we turned it into kind of more of a clinical device. And here's what we did is we have these patches. I actually have one here. I'll show you. We have these patches. And so you get a patch and you put it underneath your arm and you sleep with it for one night. Then you take your phone the next morning and you put it on the patch and you get a report of how many times your sleep was disrupted due to temperature, right?
No kidding.
So now we start to have a target that we're shooting for, right? And then we can take this data and we can put it into the product and create a profile. So it knows when to go colder, when to go warmer, and things like that throughout the night. Because what you don't want to do is just set it on as cold as it can be and, cross your fingers and hope for the best.
Yeah.
That's not how the body works, right? The body works in these circadian cycles, which we've talked about before. And so it's important for people to know and understand that there's a process that should be going on. Your body temperature should go down. It should stay down. Then it's going to slowly rise. Then it's going to go down. And then it's going to rise again for the rest of the morning to wake you up. And so being able to follow that pattern, I think, can be very advantageous, especially for women who are going through menopause. Now, not all of your listeners are menopausal women. They're women who are interested in health in general. And so this is also valuable pre and post menstrual cycle, because a lot of people have changes in their core body temperature pre and post menstrual cycle. And so I think it could be valuable there. What I also like about the device itself, and then I'll shut up about the device, is that you can do hot on one side, cold on the other, right? And so you don't lose out your partner.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of us have partners who may or may not be going through the throes of menopause or andropause or whatever. And they want it a little on the warmer side, not, like an ice box. And so what's nice about that is you can have a differential there. So that's one of the projects that, I've been fortunate enough to get involved with. Again, it's called Orion Sleep. We'll put a link in the show notes. And I'll also, by the way, check the show notes, because I'm going to give everybody a promo code so you can get 10% off. So that'll be even better. Oh, and by the way, it's one of the least expensive ones on the marketplace. Our goal is not to make, oodles and oodles of cash being this exclusive thing for, $4 or $5 grand. Our goal is to democratize. We want to get it in the hands of as many people as possible. And quite frankly, menopausal women is a big target demographic for us, because so many of them suffer in so many ways. And it's just because their sleep gets disrupted. And then, as we both know, when you have disrupted sleep, everything else just sucks, right? There's just no getting around it. Sleep really is so fundamental to so many things. But I think it's also important to kind of address the idea that, having some type of a temperature intervention can support broad aspects of women's health as they age, not just women who are going through menopause. And I think that's, it's worth a conversation. It's worth some thought.
I need the information. We'll add it to our favorite brands on the Sweaty Pillow community website. So we'll do all of that post-production. You are one of the creators of the Chronotype.
I am.
And so you're the creator. Give us an overview on what all of that means and the different profiles.
Of course. So first of all, I want to be super duper clear. Chronotypes were around long before Michael Breus. And let's kind of give a definition of what is a chronotype, because a lot of people haven't heard of that word before. But a chronotype, actually, you've heard of the concept. If anybody out there has ever been called an early bird or a night owl, those are chronotypes. So here's what's interesting. They're genetic. Like, I didn't even know this when I first started studying, but you don't get it. You can't choose whether or not you get to be an early bird or a night owl. That's actually in your genes. So one thing that I want to be thoughtful about is let people know, hey, if you try to join the 5 a.m. club and get up every day at 5 a.m. and it just didn't work for you, good. It's not supposed to work for everybody. Literally, only 15% of the population naturally gets up in those hours. So it's great for them, but it's not great for everybody else who's trying to do that. Now, here's where it gets interesting is we've heard about early bird and we've heard about night owl. And people probably guessed that there was something in between. We actually used to call them hummingbirds. I have no idea why. It seems pretty stupid to call them hummingbirds, but for whatever reason, they're hummingbirds. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I started to look into this a little bit further. And through, by the way, most of my research and my idea set comes from my work with patients. Because that's ground zero. That's where I meet people and understand more and learn more, right, about what's going on with their sleep. And so I had this patient, and I'm going to be honest with you, I failed. I mean, when I say I failed, it was spectacular. I couldn't get her to sleep no matter what. We tried cognitive behavioral therapy. We tried sleep restriction. We tried acupuncture, acupressure. We tried drugs. We tried supplements. I mean, the list was endless. And when I fail like that, and to be clear, it's not often, but I'm human, right? It happens. I bring them in for free and I just go back at it. Like, clearly I missed something in the intake, or maybe there was a test result that I need to get or something along those lines. And I'm interviewing this woman and very interesting. And she turns to me about an hour into the interview and she says, Dr. Breus, if I just lived in California, everything would be great. This is when, by the way, I was practicing on the East Coast. I'm originally from Sandy Springs, Georgia. So that's where I was practicing in Decatur, Georgia. And I said, say that again. What do you mean? And she said, well, they're 3 hours later. She was like, if I could just do everything 3 hours later, I think I'd be fine. And I was like, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah. So I wonder what that's all about. So I said, well, why don't you? And she said, well, my boss would fire me, Michael, and my husband and my family wouldn't accept that. They get up at 6:30 and they get ready for school and work and all of that. And I said, well, can I ask your boss if we could run an experiment just for a week, just to see what would happen? And can I talk to your family and ask them if we could run this for a week and see what happens? She said, yeah, sure. She said she got her husband and we talked about it, and he was like, okay, let's give it a shot. And then she was like, I'm just going to warn you, when you call my boss, things aren't good there. She said, I've been written up a couple of times. I fall asleep in meetings in the mornings, right? Because she's so exhausted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm kind of on like double secret probation. Like, it's not good, Michael. And I'm like, okay, don't worry. Like, I'm not going to make it worse. Right. And so I called the boss up, and this was on a Friday, and he said, next Friday, I'm firing her. You can do whatever you want, but if you want her to come in later, she can come in later. But I'm just letting you know, next Friday, she's fired. And I was like, no pressure.
Holy.
Let's go. So I said, instead of her coming in at 9, I want her to come in at 11. So 2 hours difference. And instead of leaving at 5, I want her to leave at 7. We go for a week. And I call him on Friday morning, and he picks up the phone. Literally the first words out of his mouth, I've got 3 more employees I want you to talk to.
Come on.
Yeah, it was crazy, right? And so I'm like, okay, I've stumbled upon something here. And so she was an extreme night owl, but also had insomnia on top of that. And what I think was a 4th chronotype. And so I started to go into the literature and started to learn more about chronotypes and their genetic underpinnings and how does it work and how does it not work. And I'm not going to get all sciencey on you, but I can show people on the human genome. Like, if you got 23andMe or Ancestry.com, I can show you exactly where on there that it tells us, hey, this person's an early bird, this person's a night owl, this person's in the middle, or this person's got something wonky going on. So I renamed the system because I'm a mammal, not a bird, and I wanted to be an animal. And so I said, early birds are now lions, because who wouldn't want to be the king or queen of the jungle, right? I mean, come on, like that's
absolutely, yeah,
right.
Yeah.
People in the middle are bears. People at night are wolves, because, wolves are nocturnal creatures,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
then I had to come up with something for this patient of mine who had crazy wonky sleep. And so I decided to call her a dolphin, and I'll tell you why. Because dolphins sleep unihemispherically, which means half of their brain is asleep while the other half is awake and looking for predators. And I was like, this feels like what's going on with her is she's never quite asleep. She's got bad insomnia. She's got high anxiety. So I created this 4 categories. Here's what ended up happening. I created a quiz. I wrote a book. And we really started to learn a lot. Now, I want to be very, very clear. Chronotypes have been around since the dawn of time. I think in the early 70s, they came up with these early bird night owl kind of designations. And let's be fair, like, this isn't new information. The new part was finding this new kind of form, this new type of person that fell into this category. And so I made a fun quiz. You can go to chronoquiz.com. We'll put it in the show notes. And you can learn what your sleep animal is. Now, you might be saying, well, that sounds like fun, but what utility is it? Like, where's the value, Michael? Like, how is this going to actually help me do things? And so here's what's fascinating is once you know this, you actually know the pattern of your hormones. Because when you wake up, all your hormones kick into gear and they go in a very cyclical pattern that's very similar every single day. But it's similar for all of the early birds, or what I call lions. It's similar for all the night owls, or what I call wolves. And so once you know your pattern, you can actually look around the clock and see when your hormones are naturally at their highest point to do those activities and do them better, right? So I'll give you an example, right? So everybody always asks me the example of, Michael, when's the best time to have sex, right? Now, sleep is easy. I can show you that. That's super easy one.
Yeah.
It's one of the first questions, right? And that, by the way, it's the most popular chapter in the book. Like,
Right on.
like, people go right to that chapter first, right? And so we figured it out. And so here's what's so fascinating is there's probably north of 200 researchers around the world who are researching chronotypes. And you can look at them. I created an easy quiz that people can take and gain some value of it. But I want to be very, very clear. There's some massive big brain scientists out there who are doing some really cool work, which is what I kind of put into my book. We've also done some science around it as well. So looking at the sex question, which again was kind of the most popular question, the first thing we had to figure out was what time are most people intimate? So it turns out most people are intimate between 10:30 and 11:30 at night. Just seems to be the way. Okay. So then I started to say to myself, that doesn't sound too good for an early bird, right? Sounds
Right?
better.
Yeah.
Sounds better for a night owl in that instance. So I said, well, let's look at their hormone profiles and see what's going on. So you need 5 hormones to successfully have a level of intimacy. You need estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. You need cortisol and adrenaline all need to be high. And you need melatonin, the sleep hormone, to be low, right?
Right.
Guess what? Right before bed at 10:30 at night, you don't have that profile. You have the opposite, right? Melatonin is high.
Yeah.
All the sex hormones are low. So that is hint number 1 as to when you might want to be being intimate with your partner. Hint number 2, if you happen to be intimate with somebody who's biologically male, what do most men wake up with in the morning? An erection. If that is not Mother Nature telling you when to use that thing, I don't know what is. Okay.
Tracking. It's all making sense. Yeah.
Right. And so you start to think about this, but that's hormonally when people are at their best, right? Now, if you're a night owl, that might not work as well for you. So the big question that I got asked after we kind of said, well, actually morning sex turns out to probably be the best. Said, well, what happens if my partner is a night owl and I'm an early bird? Because that's a real question, right? Because that happens all the time. So in the book, I created a chart where you could put your chronotype on the top, your partner's chronotype on the side, and we created a matrix. So I give you an early evening time and an early morning time to try this out and see what happens. So we tried it out in about 25 couples, and the results that we got were fascinating. Women specifically reported better connection with their partner. They felt that they had a much better emotional connection. Men were a little bit more on the physical side. They felt like they had better erections and they were able to keep their erections longer. So again, this is all good information to know, right? And it's all about when to do things. So the book is called The Power of When, or When to Do Things. And we've figured out like the best time of day to eat a cheeseburger, the best time of day to have coffee, it's crazy. Like, it's amazing. It's like an unlock in everything you'd ever wanted to do. And so that's my most popular book by far. People take the quiz and then they start to learn, hey, what's the best time of day to have coffee? What's the best time to have
Yeah.
alcohol? All of these things. Sports, we can teach people what's the best time to do cardio versus weight training. We can teach people when to do yoga versus team sports. I work with athletes all the time. We even figured out like what's the best time of day to talk to your kids, right? So when are your kids available and on board and be able to have a cogent discussion with them? So it's really fun. It's a great book. It's a fun read for sure. The chapters are very short and they really look at all kinds of different activities that you would do during the day. But the real unlock is know what your chronotype is. Now, I will also tell you that your chronotype changes. So a lot of people ask me that question, right? Is they're like, well, am I stuck with this chronotype forever? No, not at all. So it turns out that everybody goes through every chronotype. So think about it. When you're an itty bitty baby, you're a lion. You go to bed at 7 early. You wake up early, right? Then you wander into middle school, that kind of age range. You're a bear. Go to bed around 7:30. Wake up around 7:30. Then adolescence hits. You're a wolf, right? Tell me a teenager who doesn't want to stay up until 2 and sleep until 12 because they all do, right? Then you hit about 20, 25, and your chronotype seems to set for about 30 years. And then when you hit my age, I'm 57, so around 55 or so, your chronotype starts to go backwards a little bit. So, and everybody out there has experienced this. Like if you have parents that are alive or grandparents that are alive and you say, hey, grandma, I want to go out to dinner. What time does she want to go to dinner? 4:30 in the afternoon, right?
Yeah.
You're like, grandma, that's too early for dinner. But it's not for her because she's becoming a lion. Her chronotype is moving backwards. And we think there's some interesting physiological reasons for that. So that's kind of a small kind of understanding of this idea behind chronotypes. But it turns out that it's very, very important for sleep because your chronotype is your circadian rhythm. Right. And so everybody has a circadian rhythm and they're a little bit different in each person, but these are generally good categories that you can learn about your circadian rhythm and then be able to do some kind of fun things with that as well.
So the power of what you just expressed, you have given me permission for something that I've struggled with my entire adult life, because my entire adult life, I have desired to be an early bird. And every now and then I force myself, I'm going to wake up at 5 and do all the things that they tell me on Instagram.
Don't do it, girl. Don't do it.
But like, thank you. You've just relieved pressure that I'm actually never going to do that or think that. I need, plus as running a business and having a family, my 24 hours a day are never enough. And I need to optimize the windows that I can just crush it at work.
Yes.
I'm going to be really excited to get your chart with me and my husband because our sex life is going to go through the roof.
There you go.
And just that permission that you've given me. So I started the quiz on your site, but I do want to, we're going to get this book on our Sweaty Pillow book favorites as well. I'm going to read it myself and it's going to further change my life. You already have changed my life. I am never going to set my alarm again before 7:15.
Yeah, don't.
Because I try and then I press snooze and it's like I'm torturing myself.
Well, and not only are you torturing yourself, but it's depressing, It's like, like I'm a night owl, like I'm a wolf, like I have been my whole life, right? And it's like I met the guy who wrote the book, The 5 a.m. Club. His name is he's a monk. His name is Robin Sharma. And I turned to him and I'm like, Robin, like, what are you doing, bruh? Like, people can't do this. Right? Like the biology just isn't there. I also have a good friend who wrote a very famous book called The Miracle Morning, Hal Elrod. He's written a wonderful, he has a new one out for us in the senior age range now, which I'm excited to read. I called him up and I'm like, Hal, like people need to have a miracle morning at 9, not at 6:30, right?
Thank you.
Right.
And, oh my God. Amen. Yeah.
Yeah. And he agreed. He was like, like after I gave him the science, I'm like, hey, like, let me explain the science to you. Like, I'm not explaining to just, believe this full cloth. Let me explain the science to you and let's see. And so people need to meet themselves where they are. Right. And this is one of the fundamental things that you didn't know, but it's easy to figure out. Like, honestly, it takes 4 minutes with the quiz online and we can figure it out.
Well, I want to explore a little bit more on chronotypes and women going through midlife. And I was tracking everything that you said, and then I was shocked to hear that you can change chronotypes. It's very much in your wiring, but things
Yeah.
change. So what happens on average to women as they're starting the perimenopause journey?
So one of two things happens. Either they keep their original chronotype or they turn into dolphins. Okay.
Okay.
And it happens a lot. Like I've seen it a ton. And this is because of the hormonal dysregulation that is
Mm,
occurring during menopause. Now, I want to take a half a second here and I want to kind of do a little bit of a public service announcement, right? So, unfortunately, many doctors for a long time told women that they should not do HRT therapy, that it was going to cause
yeah.
breast cancer, that it was going to do all these things. That data has been debunked. That data was not accurate to begin with. HRT is very safe if done the correct way with a physician, understanding what you're doing. Bioidentical hormones or regular hormones, like they all work differently for different people. And historically, women were just basically told to suffer. Okay.
Yeah.
And that is a tragedy. That is absolutely positively inappropriate. The medical field did no woman any favors by doing that. Fortunately, that information is now finally getting out. Only within the last couple of years, by the way, have women finally been able to start to learn, like, hey, it's okay to consider hormone replacement therapy, and it's okay to do these things and understand what's going on. So I just want to be very clear for women out there. If you are under the guise that you think, oh, I can never do hormone replacement therapy, maybe I've got BRCA1 or BRCA2 or something is going on with that, talk with your doctor and understand what the data really say. Listen to the experts that come on here and really be thoughtful about what's going on there, because it is important for you to recognize that you're in a hormonal deficit, right?
Yeah.
And so that is part of the reason why you are just not feeling so great.